Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhagavata Sota Sata Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahansa Bhagavata Sota Sata Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nābha Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Brahmasaka Hosi Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki. Gangamayi Yamunamayi Ki. Radha Madhava Astashakis Ki, Panchatattva Ki, Lord and Sringadev Ki, Srila Prabhupada Ki, Gaur Premanandi, all glories assembled devotees, all glories assembled devotees, all glories assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Gauranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namaste Krishnastai Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Atmaste Sunya Paskatata. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We start with text 15, I'll read the English. Great sages completely freed from material lusty desires devote their minds fully to the service of the Lord. Such persons are liberated from material bondage without difficulty, and they become transcendently situated, acquiring the spiritual quality of the Lord. This is the glory of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text on the board is 17. Ṛtūparṇa Nala Sakal Yo Swa Vidyam Ayan Nalat Dvatvaksya Vidayam Tasmai Sarvakāmas Tu Tat Sutam Ṛtūparṇa Nayasakyo Yosva Vidyamayan Yalat Tattva Daksha Nidayam Kasmai Sarvakāmas Tu Tat Sutam. Rupaya Nanakottaya. Ladies. Ṛtūparṇa, a son named Ṛtūparṇa, Nalarāja, who was a friend of Nābha, one who, asa nidyam, the art of controlling horses, avad, achieved, nalat, from Nala, datva, after giving in exchange, aksya, hridayam, the secrets of the art of gambling, cha, and asmai, unto Nala, Sarvakāma, by the name Sarvakāma, two, indeed, tat suktam, his son, the son of Ṛtūparṇa. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Bhagīratha had a son named Śruta, whose son was Nābha. This son was different from the Nābha previously described. Nābha had a son named Sindhudvīpa. From Sindhudvīpa came Ayutāyu, and from Ayutāyu came Ṛtūparṇa, who became a friend of Nalarāja. Ṛtūparṇa taught Nalarāja the art of gambling, and Nalarāja gave Ṛtūparṇa lessons in controlling and maintaining horses. The son of Ṛtūparṇa was Sarvakāma. Purport. Oh, please repeat. Bhagīratha had a son named Śruta, whose son was Nābha. This son was different from the Nābha previously described. Nābha had a son named Sindhudvīpa. From Sindhudvīpa came Ayutāyu, and from Ayutāyu came Ṛtūparṇa, who became a friend of Nalarāja. Ṛtūparṇa taught Nalarāja the art of gambling. Nalarāja gave Ṛtūparṇa lessons in controlling and maintaining horses. The son of Ṛtūparṇa was Sarvakāma. Purport. Gambling is also an art. Kshatriyas are allowed to exhibit talent in this art of gambling. By the grace of Krishna, the Pandavas lost everything by gambling and was deprived of their kingdom, wife, family, and home because they were not expert in the gambling art. In other words, a devotee may not be expert in materialistic activities. It is therefore advised in the Shastra that materialistic activities are not at all suitable for the living entities, especially the devotees. A devotee should therefore be satisfied to eat whatever is sent as prasadam by the Supreme Lord. A devotee remains pure because he does not take the sinful activities such as gambling, intoxication, meat eating, and illicit sex. So there's a lot about gambling. First, in the 10th canto Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada describes how Krishna is the personification of gambling. The professions, of all professions, I am gambling. So, the incident that took place in the gambling match with Yudhishthira and Sakuni, there's a little story that goes with it. Sakuni was in prison with all his relatives in a cave, and they were like fasting to death by the Duryodhana, I believe. And so all the relatives of Sakuni decided that he should live because he's the youngest. So they fed him and he kept living. But from the bones of the ancestors, they fashioned a dice. And they told Sakuni, now it's your opportunity now to defeat the Pandavas and take this whole thing to another level. So, at the result of the gambling, and Sakuni's sister is Gandhari. And so the event took place, and he kept losing. And even Balaram gambled the art of gambling is a profession that some people learn really well and they make advantage of it. But generally speaking, gambling is degrading. You lose truthfulness and straightforwardness. You become addicted to this thing. And there's a place in Monte Carlo where Prabhupada mentions that gambling is king. And in gambling, people lose everything, not just their shirt, but their whole life experience, and commit suicide. And the bodies are just thrown out as garbage and left in the gutter. So is the art of gambling. And gambling, as Prabhupada describes here, is something that we should avoid, although Krishna and Radharani gambled. And I playing dice in the Kunja, Golaka Vrindavan. And they played tug of war with their clothes. There's so many funny things. But the whole thing about gambling is to take it to another level where we just stay away from it. Gambling, of course, is something that we do automatically anyway. We gamble that Krishna is God. We gamble that this Krishna consciousness movement will take us back home, back to Godhead. It's a gamble. Prabhupada talked like that. That says we gamble, we get intoxicated, we chant. By chanting, we become intoxicated. So there's two. And meat eating, we got pakora, cauliflower pakoras and cheese pakoras, and the taste of sand. The taste is the same as meat. So there's another one. By gambling, ultimately we make a choice. We gamble to be, tight in Krishna consciousness, and illicit sex is permitted in once a month in Grihastha life. So, although we gamble, we get intoxicated, we eat food that's something like meat, fish, and eggs, and you can duplicate it just about everything nowadays. In America, they got hot dogs, hamburgers, and meatballs, and they got everything in tofu and gluten. It just simulates the exact taste. Italian sausage, everything you can imagine now is available. So where's the austerities? And Prabhupada was asked in Australia, I think, that Srila Prabhupada, everybody is complaining because it's too austere. So where's the austerity? We have to get up early in the morning and take a cold shower. Prabhupada said, early to rise, early to bed makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise. And he made a joke out of it. Really, as he said it really sounded funny. But gambling is something that we take for granted. My brother took me to the new churches in Santa Fe, New Mexico, on a reservation, Indian reservations. And we got there, and I couldn't believe what I saw. It was casinos. So in the Indian reservations, the money that's coming into these reservations now in big lumps is gambling casinos. So the prostitution, Kali is awarded these places where gold is found, mainly brothels, gambling casinos, and the like. Prostitution, here's something that Prabhupada wanted to stop. As Krishna consciousness, we stop corruption as gambling, prostitution, and drinking. We want to fast 2 days a month, Ekadasi. Marriage should be at the age of 24 for the boy and 16 for the girl. Give 50% to charity for spiritual advancement. Srimad Bhagavatam preached to everyone. Karma Yoga, all for Krishna, Lord Krishna. Chanting regularly, serve devotees and become God conscious. So it's a big deal to become involved in any one of these things, gambling, casinos, but Krishna consciousness is very simple, very easy to administer, not like all the other things that are illegal. And the 64 arts, number 59, is gambling. So Yudhisthira became, in Virat's course, a gambler. And he became professional at gambling, although he lost everything before. So gambling is a vice that I've seen it myself. I've seen where people will venture and gamble everything they've got, and they lose everything, like Yudhishthira. And ultimately, Draupadi couldn't be put into a gambling match because she's not his property. And but I've seen, and I've been to Monte Carlo, I've been to Las Vegas, I've been to these places before as a devotee. And I see people so addicted, they put everything they got into this, their whole life savings, and they throw it in dice and they lose everything. And there's a whole big thing in American lotteries now, and Prabhupada talks about the lottery. The people don't think of religion, they think of lottery. And so the residue of lottery goes up into millions of dollars. And so someone buys a ticket with the anticipation of hitting it big. I have a cousin who hit it big, and she's been addicted ever since to gambling. So once you start, if you hit it once, you never lose because you keep on trying and you keep on trying, and pretty soon you lost all that you had gained. And it's like a disease that people are addicted to, and they can't stop it. They can't, for some reason, they can't do anything about it, Now, as a result of the gambling match, Draupadi was disrobed, and Prabhupada points out, as soon as she raised her arms and gave up and surrendered, and ultimately Krishna benedicted her with endless sorries. So the same thing goes for us. If we raise our hands in total surrender, ultimately we get a benediction that takes us back home, back to Godhead. So gambling is what it's a suitor art. And then there's even an incident I didn't know about, but when Krishna was with Draupadi, consoling her about the loss of everything, he cut his finger on a cutting fruit, and he even allowed himself to bleed a little bit. And so Draupadi immediately cut off a piece of her sari and wrapped up the finger. And he said, I will certainly repay you the gift of your piece of sari. Of course, he did that. And as far as prostitution goes, I've just learned that in Delhi and many big cities in India, they have spas, S-P-A. A spa is a place where you get massages, but they're prostitution houses, and it's all over Delhi now. You see these spas everywhere now, just it's like an epidemic. Then Balaram played dice. I just picked up on different things in gambling. First with Rukmi won the first match. Then second match, Balaram won. The third match, they bet 100 million gold coins. And Rukmi decided to play against Balaram, and he decided he was cheating and he didn't want to, he wasn't winning right. And he did it perfectly. Then he clubbed him over the head, and that was the end of Rukmi. So there's a story, there's two stories. Shama Sinner speaking about one incident that took place in Zurich. So in Zurich, it was a time when it was in the winter and there was nothing out there but snow and ice. So Prabhupada said, well, he was confined to the corridor in his room, and he couldn't go out because it was so cold and there was nothing to do. So, well, what do we do? Let's make some money. So he told Shama Sinner to go down to the bank and deposit and make some money on a deposit, and ask him if there's any means by which there's a way to make big money. And so now this is unusual for Prabhupada. So Prabhupada called Kurandar in L.A. and said, bring a bunch of money. We need, I think it was like $40,000. So bring that money to Zurich, and we're going to start a temple here. And so Kurandar ended up in Zurich with the money, and he gave it to Shama Sundar. Now you go down and put this where we know it's going to make money. Now Prabhupada did this because the Zurich manager of the bank told Shama Sundar that very soon Japan was going to buy a lot of gold. And so the gold is going to spike, it's going to skyrocket. And so he told Prabhupada that. So he said, okay, invest in gold. Okay, so now this is very rare this ever happens. And so Prabhupada watched it, the market rise. It kept rising, then it'll level off. Okay, sell it. And a little while later, Shamasunder told everybody about this. And so some of the God brothers, and he took BBT money, invested in, when Nixon took the dollar off the gold standard, the skyrocketed thing happened again. So Shamasunder put that money into gold. And Prabhupada found out about it, he was furious. He said, you can't do that, that's gambling. No, he just got through gambling. And Karandar told Prabhupada, he said, Prabhupada, you can't do this, you can't invest in the stock market, it's gambling. He said, well, Shamasunder can do it, he's expert. And so at one point he said, okay. The next point he took Shamasunder to the bank and you trade that money back into dollars. We're not gamblers. And so Prabhupada had two ways of looking at things. And we do gamble about our lives. We gamble that we're Krishna conscious, and we try the best to be devotees at least. So as a result of the 12 years of exile, 1 year was incognito in Virat's kingdom. And so Yudhisthira was the court gambler. And they all took on different positions, of course. And eunuch, Arjuna eunuch, was cursed by a heavenly damsel that you'll be a eunuch for a year. And he took that position. And Uttara's was the daughter. And so that was training up Uttara in the dancing arts. So when it came around to the final, when the invasion took place, when the Kauravas came and stole all the cattle because they understood that maybe there was a Pandavas was hiding here, because they had some information that leaked out. Because when Bhima took the minister of defense and beat him to a pulp and made him into a pile of flesh, because Draupadi was intimidated by this guy. And so the word got around. Who would do that? Who could do that but only Bhima? So the Pandavas were still in incognito. Then finally, it's a beautiful story. In the beginning of the Mahabharata takes place the day that Bhimala or Arjuna in disguise went with the prince. They went out to face the army, with the prince sitting there in the chariot as he's going to conquer the Kaurava army. When he saw the army, it was like, splayed out. It was a massive army. They brought the whole entourage. And there was Karna, there was Drona, there was Bhishma. All the big stalwarts, all the what do they call it, Maharathis. All the Maharathis were there in plain view. So the guy got off the chariot and started running. He said, I'm not going to face these guys. And so Arjuna stopped him, pulled him back on the chariot, went off to the tree where the weapons were hanging as a corpse, the shape of a corpse. So he cut it down, and when he opened up, there are all these splendid, all these swords and arrows and the Gandiva. And there was Arjuna had two quivers, two quivers that never emptied. And so they were there. And so when he looked, he looked at the weapons, and the prince looked at Arjuna, and Arjuna took on his old form as Arjuna. So that was the beginning of the end for the Kaurava's army, because he fired the beginning salute to Drona and Bhishma, and those arrows landed at their feet, and they knew it was Arjuna immediately. And so Arjuna started a flurry of arrows that put the whole Kaurava army into slumber. And so they wanted the prince to take the scarf or the cloth from each one of these great warriors. And so Arjuna did that. When they got back, then the word got around that the king's son defeated the whole Kaurava army. And Yudhisthira just looked at the king and says, "No, it was Arjuna. They didn't know yet that they were the Pandavas." And so the king got upset, threw the dice, and hit Yudhisthira in the head and drew blood. So Arjuna made a vow, if anybody ever drew blood from Yudhisthira, he would kill him immediately. So he cupped his hands, he caught the blood, and made sure that Arjuna didn't come in at that time. And so ultimately, he cleaned up, and next morning they were sitting on the thrones in white, dressed in armor, and they looked at the armor, and ultimately they had a choice when they walked in the beginning. It was either the armor or books and japamala and so many things that devotees would use. But they looked at the armor, the swords and bow and arrows. So these bow and arrows are not ordinary, of course, and we know what happened in the Mahabharata war. That because of that disrobing was the incident that made the whole thing see the explosion. And so they were dead set against killing all the Kauravas. And so once the king saw these guys sitting on the thrones, he was even more infuriated. "Well, who are you people? What do you think you're doing? You're a court jester. You're a eunuch. You're all just low people, low class, like Sudras are gambling. Sudras are gambling art." So then Arjuna described who Yudhisthira really is. That he's like ultimately, he's from Dharmaraj. He's inspired by the Lord of Knowledge, Dharma. And there's nobody in the three worlds that can beat him. And so then he described all the Pandavas. And he says, "Myself, I am Arjuna." And so then the king just started crying. He said, "Oh my God, you guys were in here for a whole year and I never recognized you." And so that took place, and so then he offered a daughter to Arjuna, Uttara. And so I can't do it because I was with her and we were alone so many times, and I don't want it to look like I was making advances with her. And so my son, Abhimanyu, will take the responsibility and take the daughter in marriage. And so they called the whole force, all the forces. Immediately, as soon as that happened, of course, it rang a bell that ultimately you got to get prepared for war. And Satyaki was the first one to start talking about it, because Balaram in the court decided that ultimately they have to go by what the Kauravas have advised. We have to wait and do it honestly and peacefully. There can't be any war. So Balaram was still siding with the Kaurava because of Duryodhana. He taught him the art of fighting with the mace. So, but Satyaki was a little bit, and there was others that thought the same way, that we better get prepared now because the war is coming for sure. And so after the wedding with Abhimanyu and Uttara, then they had a war council. And then at council they decided that we should send out somebody should go to Hastinapur and try to talk peace with the Kaurava army. They knew, of course, it wouldn't be possible. Nobody wants to, on that side, nobody wants to give the Pandavas even enough land to put a pin in. And so, ultimately, Krishna did go, and we know the story, how he expanded himself, and they tried to kill Krishna, and he's just not going to try to expand. I mean, as his expansion took place, they stopped everybody in their tracks. But they sent out emissaries all over the world. And so all these different kings, they became, because whoever gets there first is the one that gets, because the Kshatriya is obligated by honor. Whoever asks them, they have to be ultimately honored by saying yes to a battle. The Kshatriya is ordered a battle, he has to go, he has to fight, same as with gambling. So these are some things that a Kshatriya can do, and hunting in the forest. fierce animals and learn the art of killing. So it's not easy to kill. It takes a lot of stamina and a lot of energy and a lot of forbearing to be able to do that. So countries are trained to do that. And so the kings went out and they gathered their forces, and they came back to Virat's kingdom. A massive show, huge amounts of soldiers, and then the Kauravas understood what was taking place, and they started doing the same thing. So they decided, both Arjuna and Duryodhana, to go to Krishna immediately, because whoever got there first would be the person that would get the army. And so, of course, they both arrived. Duryodhana got there first. And then Arjuna arrived just at the same time. And so they went together, and they patted each other on the back, and they walked into Krishna's bedroom. Krishna's still asleep. So right away, Duryodhana sat by the side near his head. And it's a famous story. And Arjuna stood at the feet and just looked and waited for him to wake up. So Krishna did wake up and looked at Arjuna first, and then realized that Duryodhana was sitting by his side. And so that's the answer. So Arjuna had the option. But Duryodhana said, I got here first. You should attend to my wishes first. And Krishna said, no, Arjuna is the first thing I saw. And so whatever he wants, we'll ask and let him decide first. So he asked Krishna what he wanted. He said, I will give you my whole army, millions of soldiers, or I will give you myself, and I won't fight. I'll just be helping you. I'll be with you. But you have a choice. Take either the army or take me. Of course, Arjuna made a famous choice, and he got Krishna directly. And Duryodhana got the army. And so the army left with Duryodhana. And Krishna asked Arjuna, why did you take me? I'm not going to fight. I can't care to take on any arms. I can't fight. Balaram's not even going to be here. He decided he's not going to fight or take part in either side. So he left on pilgrimage. And so I'm with you. I'll even drive your chariot, but I'm not going to fight. So ultimately the fight ensued, and then ultimately it's amazing, the stories of Mayapur. But the whole thing began that first day when Arjuna took those warning arrows and shot in front of the feet of Duryodhana, in front of Drona, Bhishma, and they knew exactly what was happening, because Krishna is unlimited, and immediately the whole idea of trying to defeat the Pandavas was stopped in its tracks. And Yudhishthira, then came Vyasadeva to talk to Dhritarashtra and try to stop the whole thing from happening. But he predicted that ultimately you're going to lose everything in this. They lost in a gambling match that was rigged by the bones of Sakuni's ancestors. They were rigged because they would always come in his favor. So now it's going to turn around. You're going to lose everything that was assigned to them will be reinstated, and you're going to lose everything no matter what you do. So all your sons are going to die. You can stop this war. The first thing you should do is kill your son Duryodhana. And so Dhritarashtra couldn't anticipate anything like that. So ultimately, he couldn't back down. He couldn't give Duryodhana a no. So ultimately, the fight took place. And even along the way, when Gandhari got punched her belly because Kunti had the first son. Her son was Yudhishthira. And she punched her belly, and 100 pieces of flesh, a big mound of flesh came out of her. She gave birth to a bunch of flesh. No babies, only a big pile of flesh. And so it was conceived that these pile of flesh would turn into children. 100 babies were born in a pile and kept in in vats with, I think, oil. And so out of these vats came all these children. She had 100 children, which is what she wanted. So Gandhari had the initiative to blind herself by covering her eyes with cloth, so she couldn't see when she knew she was going to marry a blind guy. So Dhritarashtra, blind from birth, had the opportunity to see Krishna for a moment when he expanded himself in the court, when he was asked as an emissary to be asking the Pandavas in the court as to a means of peaceful surrender and understanding. It was meant to give the Pandavas half the kingdom. That's what was aspiring. They wanted half, not just a village. But a village would have been enough. But the village idea was thrown out by Duryodhana. And so Vasudeva gave the warning that ultimately if you don't stop it, you're going to lose everything, and you'll be living here in shame. In your old age, you'll be like a eunuch yourself and just be living at the whims of the Pandavas. So that begins the whole story of the Mahabharata. And then the whole fighting series that took place was observed and witnessed by a crow and by a head that was stuck on a pike. And the information got to Dhritarashtra by a servant, and he was on the battlefield and fought, apparently, according to Mahabharata. And then he would go back to the court and tell Dhritarashtra what had taken place. So the Mahabharata story is like all beginning on the gambling episode when they lost everything. He kept gambling, although he knew the dice was rigged. He knew that they were cheating, but still, out of pride, they had to keep fighting. There was no way they could stop. So that's the use of gambling. So I'll wrap it up with a couple points here. There are many ways to gamble and ways to cheat. So gambling is one means of cheating. Another means is those that do cheat, they got a propensity to make people lose everything they've got. There's a story in L.A. in the temple. One person, a black guy, was dressed as a devotee and was giving money in exchange for, you give $10, I'll give you 15 back. And so he kept doing that. He kept giving people more money than what they paid in. And so pretty soon it got around everybody in the temple. All the men were thinking about, expanding their money. And so I think hundreds and hundreds of dollars was given to this guy, and he was giving money back in different exchanges. So finally, he amassed a great amount of money. He had a storefront in L.A., and so devotees would go there and give the money and get money back. Suddenly he had all the money he wanted, and he disappeared. He closed the shop, disappeared, and never came back. And so there's so many ways that devotee got cheated in gambling. There's a thing called what's it called? A person who sees what you want and wants to help you in certain ways. It can bring you a good win. It can bring you everything you need to make your success in your desires. So you got to be very careful who you entrust, because when you unveil your desires, people will start to say, I can help you, I can do so much to help you. In fact, it happened to me. So this person who ripped me off for quite a bit of money, he said, we can do so many things, we can invest. I got all this money in my back pocket, and he had crores. And so we ended up going to Dwarka, and it was an episode that it was like a dream sequence. So here we were talking to the guy that's in control of all the harbor, all the ships going in and out around India. Dwarka is still a harbor. And so the idea was to build a new harbor, bigger, so bigger ships can come in. Because India is not on the exact line for all the big ships. The sea route goes right by India. So the idea was to build a bigger harbor and dredge out and make Dwarka a big city. And there was enough land, like 700 acres. 750 acres was going to be assigned for the project to build a new city in Dwarka. And so the whole thing was just meant to happen. It was just one signature away, and Krishna stopped it. And so the whole thing just fell apart. So you can go right up to the front of your nose, and then ultimately that carrot just disappears. So the moral of the story is be very careful about how you invest your money and your interest. And those who want money, they have to go back to America or Australia or anywhere, Europe, to make money, get a job, and make some money to stay in India. So one devotee, I said, listen, don't leave Vrindavan. I was 40 years in Vrindavan. And this devotee had to go back. He said, I got to go to England and make some money. And so he left, and I never heard from him again. And ultimately, he was supposed to be a sannyas, but that got taken away. And he got caught with drugs and was in jail and hung himself. So it's not easy to, if you have to, it's not even required that Krishna will provide everything if we keep our hands open and our head clear. And so Krishna is a provider, so what can a devotee need if he's not satisfied by what he's got? So that's the whole idea. Satisfaction, like it says here in this purport. Satisfied in what we are given in prasadam, satisfied in what we earn and what we have in our account, and not to ascribe to double it or triple it. And so there are many stories that go on like this about how people cheat. In Naples, in Italy, I was in the Navy, and we stayed in Naples. One of my friends bought a little radio and put it in a box. We showed the radio, and it worked, and it put it in a box. So he got the box back to the ship, and there was a brick inside. So there's a school of cheaters in Naples, and they still do that. So be very careful. Ultimately, cheating goes on everywhere you look. And if Krishna is the greatest of cheaters, then how can anybody win? When Krishna pulls the plug, ultimately you lose everything. I've had friends that do that. They gamble everything they got, and ultimately at the last card they lose everything. And then what happens after that? A lot of people, Prabhupada says, it's suicide. It happens in Monte Carlo, it happens in Las Vegas, and all these places where they lose everything. The manager of Elvis Presley, this is a little far-fetched, but he gambled everything, and whatever money Elvis was making, the manager gambled it all away, and so he was bankrupt. And he kept saying, as long as Elvis is on stage, we're making money, and I'll double it, triple it. But he just lost everything that he had. And Bibi Govinda Maharaj, his father, was the manager of Elvis for the beginning. That I don't know if everybody knows this, but he was. Then they switched. Johnny Cash became, and Elvis switched managers, and they switched, and he gave it up, and so Johnny Cash dropped him after some point. So. Gambling is definitely frowned upon, and Prabhupada said that's why there's 4 regular principles. We can follow these 4 regular principles, ultimately we go back home, back to Godhead. It's simple as that. We just chant the Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi. Any questions? Any gamblers here? Yeah. The microphone is there.
In the beginning of the purport, Prabhupada writes that by Krishna's mercy, the Pandavas lost everything. And it's Krishna who inspires and instructs Arjuna to fight to get back everything. So how do we understand both these?
Better repeat it. I didn't catch the whole thing.
In the beginning of the purport, Prabhupada writes that by Krishna's mercy, the Pandavas lose everything.
Yeah.
And it's Krishna who actually instructs Arjuna to fight to get back everything.
Yeah,
So-
Krishna took everything away. Krishna's gambling. Of all professions, I am gambling. That's what the Bhagavad Gita says. And so it was all just a setup. That it had to be, the war had to happen because there was such an influx of all these kings all over the world that were impious. So the whole way to change it all, to put everybody in one place and just do it in 18 days. And so that's what happened. Krishna's set up. And even when, after in Srimad Bhagavatam, it talks about Bhima's talking about Krishna. He says, "Is there anything he doesn't cheat us on? We've been cheated by everything Krishna has done." And so, who can believe in what Krishna says? He's the biggest cheater anyway. And so that's why we worship Krishna as a cheater, as stealing butter, and right up to this Mahabharata war. And so ultimately, it's difficult to understand the whole thing clearly because Krishna will intervene in our own lives and cheat us also, because ultimately. The Prabhupada said that if I told you in the beginning what Krishna consciousness really is, you wouldn't be here, because the austerity is built in to some degree. It's more austere not to be a devotee, of course, but some devotees, there's some austerities involved in being a devotee. So ultimately, it works in both ways. Is that right? Anybody else? Any gamblers here? Maharaj, are you a gambler? No. Anybody gamble? Anybody here who never gambled? Raise your hand. He raised his hand. But I think everybody gambles in some way or other. In any case, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Brahmanandi. Hari Hari Bo.